It's 2035. I'm 25 now. 10 years ago in 2025, I believed in Ghana's promise.
But that promise was broken. We are speaking to you from a future you are creating. A future without hope.
I was 15 in 2025. Back then, Ghana was still called the gem of Africa. Accra, the safest city on the continent. But no one really planned for us.
Our leaders argued over politics whilst the future slipped away. They never asked what skills we would need, never built a system to prepare us. Dreams became promises and promises became lies.
Now at 25, the only way to make your dreams work is to leave. The smartest and the brightest of us, them all left.
The rest risked everything, crossing deserts and seas in search of greener pastures. Some never made it alive. Ghana raised us, but it couldn't keep us. I studied hard, earned my degree, but in something with no future. By the time I graduated, the world had moved on. AI and technology had taken over every job we were promised. My certificate, it's just paper. Paper that cannot feed me.
Those of us still here, when we look for work, industries tell us our skills are too low, our training outdated. We are a generation rejected by our own economy.
Young men drown their anger in drugs and violence. And young women, too many are forced into undignified choices, degrading their dreams just to survive.
This is Ghana in 2035. Once a shining light, now a warning. Once the safest place in Africa, now I fear walking home at night.
And patriotism? It has vanished. We no longer believe in a nation that did not believe in us. We sing the anthem, but feel nothing. We wave the flag, but it means nothing.
The price of failure is everywhere. Broken families, wasted talents, leaders with no plan. A future sold to despair.
If only in 2025, Ghana had made the bold choice to invest in us, its people, our story would have been different.
Ghana's Human Capital Index is 0.45, amongst the lowest in Africa. Youth unemployment stands at 32.8%, and for those aged 15 to 24, it's even higher. 77% of our workforce is trapped in the informal sector, contributing only 27% to the nation's GDP. These are not predictions, these are today's realities. And behind these numbers are millions of lives suspended and waiting. When nearly 1 in 3 young people are unemployed, it is not just a statistic, it's an economic crisis.
We want to talk about human capital development, and there are a number of issues to look at in this space. For a very long time, many countries have considered the need to upskill their people, deal with education, deal with capacity, deal with competencies. Unfortunately for us in Africa, we still have not done the work that is needed to enable human capital development to be front and center in a very strategic and synergistic way. So the first thing that we need to ask ourselves, what do we mean by human capital development? Human capital development is not education policy. Human capital development is not human development index. Human capital development is not primary school, secondary school, whatever. No. Human capital development is the identification of the sets of skills and competencies required now and into the future, and then working the parameters to achieve those And if that means particular educational policies, fine. If that means particular institutional arrangements, fine. If that means particular approaches by which we can send people somewhere to do skills training and so on, fine.
Human capital, it's more than numbers, more than headcounts and classrooms. It is the alignment of skills, knowledge, and opportunity. But here lies Ghana's crisis. A skills gap so wide that even our brightest graduates are unprepared for the demands of industry. Employers call it a mismatch. Policymakers call it progress. But for young people, it feels like betrayal.
Questions have been asked. Is there a skills gap where Ghana is concerned? That is debatable, isn't it? That there is a skills gap. And the skills gap is in the 70% of Ghana's population. And which are the 70%? The youth. That's where the skills gap is. So you ask the question, how do we now straighten it? Go to the curricula. And that is where the challenge is. Where you have a curriculum that is run by politicians, it's very difficult because then personal interest comes before national interest. And if we don't begin to say to ourselves, we need to build a nation with a strong foundation, let's forget it. And it's up to us to make sure that those we vote into power understand what it means to rationalize business.
A framework for national policymakers categorizes human capital into 4 tiers for national development. At the base, Tier 1, policy direction, the nationally agreed vision that should guide everything else. Tier 2, processes, education, study, apprenticeship, and training systems that build skills. Tier 3, performance factors, the specific competencies that drive productivity, such as entrepreneurial acumen, innovation, or analytical capacity. And at the top, Tier 4, national outcomes, the broad results, growth, institutional stability, and social cohesion. But Ghana's challenge is quite clear. We have never secured Tier 1. Without policy direction, the entire structure is unstable.
It always raises the question, what are we doing with the Tier 1 in the immediate post-independence years? To have the GIMPA education, the School of Administration education to the KNUs, it took a Tier 1 policy decision, policy direction. We gave us the Tier 2, these education institutions. We gave us the Tier 3, the competencies, which are now given us a Tier 4, what these institutions are producing. Ghana, in a sense, does not typically import civil or mechanical engineers, no, because we produce them. So this is critical for the whole agenda of human capital development. And if there's anything that I wish to contribute to the discussion, it is precisely this, that it has come time for us, and this is a recommendation I've made over and over again, it has come time for us as a nation to set up a panel of experts drawing from public sector, private sector, higher education, whose job it is to research the skills and competencies required into our future.
Policy without alignment creates graduates without a market, and markets move fast. Our natural resources are time-bound. When the well runs dry and prices turn, only people keep an economy standing.
Our human capital is both positive and a negative for us. And I view it that, yes, we've got the youth on our side, but are they equipped? Do they understand the basic principle, which is, what does good look like? You know, that is where I find a lot of our shortcomings, because people will accept substandard, assuming it is good. And we've also got to learn to understand that we want to prepare our youth not only for Ghana, we want to make them globally competitive. That now the world is kind of opened out. So whatever skill sets I train you for in Ghana, you should be able to demonstrate that power in any of the other nations. The younger generation is in a more complicated world, and we've got to recognize it. They are now competing with both human and inhuman. They're competing with AI. We didn't. You've got to come out of the assumption that I'm going to do something so that I can be hired. that I'm going to prepare myself, hoping the world will take me on. Their thinking has to change. It is, I am coming because the world is waiting for me. The world needs me. It's not me that needs the world, because I'm up against things that breathe and things that do not breathe. So now I've got to look at things no longer from the beginning to the end. I'm now looking at the end to go to the beginning, to develop myself, that by the time I'm done, the ending is waiting for me because I planned my dream based on the end.
If resources are finite, then people must be infinite, and that requires more than policy documents. It takes institutions that set a new standard for education and work readiness. In Ghana, the Design and Technology Institute has become that model, pioneering the precision quality framework to align training with industry. One of its flagship programs, the PQ Internship, shows what's possible when young people are prepared with the skills and standards that employers actually demand.
The jobs of the future is not necessarily what you studied now. And so positioning yourself for the labor market is also very crucial. The mindset of, understanding that the industry has certain expectations of you. Remember, you want to join the labor market, either to be self-employed or to join a company, and you're competing globally. Now you can imagine as a young person, you're also coming out and you also don't have the critical skill sets. They'll continue to fly in foreign labor. And so we've been very intentional to embed the precision quality curriculum that will churn out a lifelong learner, fit for work, and understanding that they're dealing and don't have to compete with the global market. How do you plug into the global market means that you have to understand that the currency for success is standards. Because you see, a lifelong learner is not just, I can weld or I can do something properly. But everything about you makes you stand out. The softer things in today's world is even more crucial. Any employer is hiring for attitude. Everybody wants to hire a good worker. You can be the best technically, but if you don't possess these critical soft skills, nobody is interested in hiring you. So these are all things that we focus on deliberately to ensure that our interns that come out have a precision quality mindset and are positioned not just for today's jobs, but for the future of work.
But Ghana's economy isn't only boardrooms and rigs. 70+% of our people work in the informal sector. And if human capital is our engine, the informal sector is the torque, especially the women who hold it together.
Our challenges that we are facing in the fish processing or fishmongers is that it seems they don't recognize us in some ways. Simply because, one, when they are doing Farmers Day, when they call the fisher force, or they will give us award, things that they have to give us, they don't give us. At times, they will give us some small pan and the wire mesh, and then they will give us Wellington boots and cutlasses. We don't know what we are going to do with the cutlasses and the Wellington boot. Excuse me, we don't win on the sea. But normally what we do is that, formerly we don't send our children to school. Now we have sent our children to school to university level. And now when we send our children to school too, we as a fishmongers and fish processors, their children is there, they have complete university, having their correct pass, they don't get to work. We have forced our children not to go to fishing and stop them in child labor. And now this is where they have reached, they don't get to work. These are the challenges we are facing.
When the farm and the sea no longer guarantee work, and even education cannot promise a future, what happens to a nation's hope? From boardrooms to classrooms, from fishing harbors to factories, the story is the same. Without a clear direction for human capital, we raise children for a future that does not exist. Ghana's challenge is not talent, it is vision. And vision begins at the base. The cost of inaction is already here. The only question left is, will we keep wasting generations, or will we finally invest in people as the true heart of Ghana's growth?